Wow. Okay.
Lawlers, welcome back to another Season 13 Champion Guide. Today we're covering off Poppy. She's a very tanky champion with good engage, disengage, and crowd control that can be flexed across the top or jungle roles. She's got a great win rate right now in Season 13 too, so if you haven't played this champion, you might want to consider picking her up and one-tricking. She doesn't get banned a lot, and a lot of people aren't used to playing against her. Her damage can be surprising while she's still a tank, so pretty good champion in my opinion. In this guide, we're going to cover off everything you need to know to pick her up and start having fun and winning games fairly quickly. We're going to start with her runes, then we're going to talk about her items and build path. We're going to get into her skills and abilities, some very easy combos you can look to use in your games, and then wrap it all up with a sample lane phase for about 10 minutes so you guys know how to play this champion at the start of the games that you're going to be getting into. With all that said, let's chat about the runes here. Grasp of the Undying setup is basically her highest winning rune page. It procs very well off of her passive, so even into range matchups you can use this with success. And then you're going to follow that up with Shield Bash, because as you pick up your buckle off the passive, you're going to gain a shield, so this again synergizes well with Poppy's passive. And then you have Bone Plating, just a great kind of rune for anyone who's going to be bruiser, tanky, top lane, kind of getting into fights a lot. And then you have Revitalize as well for an extra little bit of heal and shield power, which again works really well off of Poppy's passive since you're going to be picking up shields a bunch in the lane phase. Secondary trees, Biscuit Delivery and Time Warp Tonic. Now this is because of our starting item being Corrupting Potion, and also the Biscuit Delivery just gives us some extra sustain in the lane phase. We're kind of like a spell casting tank. We're going to use a lot of abilities basically through our Q non-stop, so we want a little bit of mana sustain, and because we're melee range, we're probably going to be taking a lot of poke damage either from autos or ranged attacks or even abilities in the lane phase. So the Time Warp Tonic and Biscuit Delivery just give us good sustain in the early phase of the game. Knowing all that, let's chat about the build now. So Poppy's pretty tanky in terms of how we're going to build her, and all of her abilities scale off of max health, physical damage, you know, armor, magic resist. Some of them scale off attack damage in terms of the E and the ult, but really here we want to be building Poppy tanky. So if we look at the shop, we've got a few starting item options. I'm going to recommend that as a beginner you pick up Corrupting Potion in every single game. Like we talked about, it gives you health and mana sustain with the 3 charges, so that works really well on Poppy. Rush item right now in terms of highest win rate, you want to rush the Iceborne Gauntlet. This gives you 400 health, 50 armor, and 20 ability haste. You are going to be looking to spam your Q a lot and use your E as much as possible, so the ability haste off this item is great. So we pick that up first, then depending on the enemy that you're going to be facing in lane and probably the team comp overall, you're going to pick a pair of boots here, either the plated steel caps if you're into a very attack damage heavy team, or the Mercury treads if you need to reduce some of that slows or taunts or fears or whatever you're going to get into with teams that are going to try and hold you back basically or have magic damage. So generally the plated steel caps is the way to go. And then the third item that you're going to pick up to finish your core set is the Sunfire Aegis. With this setup here, this is going to be your core item set, and you're going to start to hopefully take over the game at this point if you can get these 3 items by 20 minutes, either through farming really effectively or by killing enemy champions or by taking turret plates. With Poppy, it's probably going to have to come from farming well or getting kills. She's not great at hitting towers and taking turret plates, so just do the best you can to pick up farm and maybe some kills by using your Q in the early lane phase. Okay, so that's the runes, that's the build and items. Let's now talk about Poppy's abilities. There's a lot to chat about here in terms of their hitboxes, which I find very interesting and where you're going to want to spend the most time learning. Okay, Lawlers, and just quickly before we get into the abilities here, I forgot to chat about the summoner spells. Flash and Teleport is going to be your go-to for Poppy as a top laner. Flash obviously is just super powerful, and Teleport, it's going to allow you to join team fights and use some of your crowd control and engage and disengage as the game goes into the mid and late phases. It's just really, really powerful on Poppy and scales better than Ignite would, so you want to make sure you take Flash and Teleport in all of your games. Now, the abilities here, Let's start with the passive, Iron Ambassador every 13 seconds, and this cooldown goes down as you level up. Poppy's next attack throws her buckler, gaining 350 range and dealing additional magic damage. The buckler is going to ricochet off the target, landing somewhere nearby on the ground, and if you pick it up by walking over it, you're going to gain a shield. Enemies can step on it to destroy it. And lastly here, it automatically returns to Poppy if it kills the target. So I'll just show you this right now. Generally, Poppy's a melee champion, but with the passive active, she throws this little buckle. It's going to still deal some damage, and then you can pick it up to gain a shield. All right, it has a cooldown. We've got cooldown set to auto here, so you're not going to be able to see it. But in your games, after you throw this, it's going to be on a cooldown for 13 seconds before you can use it again. But anytime that passive is up, and you'll see it here because it's going to be gold on your screen, you want to make sure you try and auto the champion with that, or last hit a minion so you instantly get a shield, and then go in for a trade after you pick up that shield. So this is kind of like just off the bat with your passive, a good opportunity to look to proc your Grasp of the Undying by throwing it and hitting it against an enemy champion. And then if you have a chance to pick up the buckle because it kind of drops towards you, maybe going for a trade with your Q and other abilities. But the buckle kind of throws off a bit randomly. You can see sometimes it's going to land left, right, behind, in front of the champion. So determine whether you want to go and pick it up and if it's worth it, or if it's just worth to hit the champion or last hit the minion and leave it there and wait for another 13 seconds. So abilities now, Q, Hammer Shock. This is going to be the ability you pick up first in lane and also max out outside of your ultimate, of course. This slams the ground, deals some damage, slows people, and then after a second it erupts and deals damage and slows people again. So it's kind of like a two-part ability, does the same thing both ways, slams the ground, area effect damage and slow, and then it explodes and area effect damage and slow again. So great on minions, great to use if enemies are clumped up. You can damage both of them, slow them, and then damage them again. I would say in lane phase, you're mostly going to be using this ability to last hit minions or to harass and trade the enemy champion when they're in their own minion line. Of course, you can use it again, kind of that engage, disengage style of Poppy because of the slow. You can use it and then keep moving towards the champions and dealing damage. Or if you don't want to fight them and they're engaging on you, you can use it and just walk away, and it's going to provide an area of slow in front of you that'll help you disengage or help your teammates disengage. So kind of keep that in mind with all of Poppy's abilities. There's kind of this engage, disengage duality to them. So you really have to decide in each scenario if it's better to use them to engage and start to fight and deal some damage, or if it's better to disengage and walk away. All right, so that's the Q. Next ability you're going to pick up in lane is going to be your E. So this one here, Heroic Charge. Poppy tackles an enemy, dealing 65 damage and carrying them forward. If Poppy tackles them into terrain, the enemy is stunned and then takes additional damage. So this one's not so much about the damage, it's a little bit more about the crowd control and stunning someone. So there's an interesting kind of hitbox to this in terms of the path beyond the circle. This is where I can tackle someone in terms of actually hovering my mouse, pressing E, and tackling them. But once I tackle them, there's an area beyond that circle. You can see that arrow now above the champion there, that it's actually going to shove them forward. And if I shove them into terrain, it's going to stun them. So the best use of this ability is obviously going to be to push the enemy champion into a piece of terrain if you can and stun them. If I don't get them into terrain, they won't get stunned. They'll still take a little bit of damage, and I could push them away from getting, you know, a last hit on a cannon minion, or push them away from hitting my ADC. So again, there's some disengage peel to this, but there's also the engage aspect where if I want to engage on a champion, ideally we're looking to stun them into a wall so we can keep beating up on them. And this is really Poppy's only, I guess, basic ability combo that you're ever going to think about, which is E'ing and then Qing right after and just following up with some autos. All right, the Q technically is a skill shot. You could miss it, as you can see here. So if we land the E and stun them into some terrain, we can definitely land that Q and hopefully keep them in both parts of the Q to deal the explode damage as well. So in a practice tool, I'd recommend just really getting used to the angles of using Poppy's E and when it's going to stun someone and from how far. If you can get down the stun, you're going to notice that your trades get a lot more powerful and you'll be a lot more useful in team fights as Poppy, especially in kind of like these areas in the river or jungle where there's all these weird walls that you can stun people into. Just get used to how far the stun is. Sometimes it's actually surprising. If I set up a dummy here, for example, you might not think you'd be able to stun them into that wall, but then it'll still get them. Sometimes it could be a little bit too far and you won't be able to stun them. So for example here, you won't be able to get them. So I just recommend, like, my first big tip for Poppy, because the combos aren't really that hard. You E, they stun, you Q. It's just learning the E range and learning where people are going to get stunned. Alright, so just try and practice that in a tool here. I think it's going to be a big benefit. If you're just going to jump into games right away, I'd say just at least try and hit people when they're close to walls and think about it like a straight angle. So try and get your champion in a wall lined up so when you hit them, you know, they can jump into a wall and get stunned. And then just follow that up with a Q, pick up your buckles when you can, and keep autoing them. Next ability here is the W. I know we've been chatting a lot about the Q and the E because that's really the bread and butter of, you know, Poppy's identity before her R, which we'll get to in a second here. But the W, Steadfast Presence, passively, this is just going to give Poppy extra armor and magic resist, which is great. You kind of don't have to think about it. It's just going to happen. So it's making you tankier in the background passively. But actively, it does give you a bit of movement speed, and it also projects a field around her that prevents people from jumping or dashing in or out of that field. If they jump or dash and they hit that field, they're going to get grounded and slowed for a little bit and take some damage as well. So here you can see that field just comes up around her for a couple seconds. If people were dashing in or out of that, they're going to get grounded and slowed. So it's a nice way to prevent people from getting away from you. Again, if you're trying to engage, you can press that W and keep them in the circle with you and prevent them from dashing away or jumping away. And then also, if you had kind of an ADC here and this was an assassin and they were going to jump in like a Kha'Zix, you could press this and stop them from jumping in against your carry. So a little bit of disengage as well, right? So there's that engage aspect with the speed and keeping them in your field, and there's the disengage aspect with keeping them off your carries maybe, or if someone was trying to jump onto you and you don't want to fight them, running away and pressing W will stop them. All right. So the way you might want to use this with a combo in terms of your basic abilities in lane is if the champion's close to a wall, you can use a little bit of a speed boost you get off of it to get into a better position to stun them and land your E and your Q. Alright, so you could use that W before EQ to get a bit of a speed boost, EQ, and that's going to be your trade. Alright, again, hopefully picking up your buckles to prevent yourself from taking too much damage in those trades. Alright, last ability here we're going to chat about before we get into our sample lane phase is Poppy's R, Keeper's Verdict. She basically knocks people up if you tap it, or she knocks them towards their base if you hold it for a little bit longer. Alright, there's a little bit of damage associated with this, but really it's the crowd control of either knocking someone up or knocking them back to their base. So again, engage wise here, if we just tap it, it's a nice engage tool because it's going to knock people up, keep them in place, and you can follow up with more damage or other parts of your combo. So again, you could E someone, Q them, tap the R, knock them up, keep them here, keep fighting them. Or if you hold the R and she starts to swing, it's going to knock them back to their base. Wherever they are, it's going to knock them towards their base. So if we're in the top river, it'll knock them this way. If we were in the bottom river here, it would knock them this way back to their base. Okay. The interesting thing with the hitbox on this is if you have multiple enemies in a clump and you tap it like we talked about, it'll knock up multiple. If you hold it, it'll knock back multiple too. But the hold is in a line, so it's going to be the first enemy hit in a line. So if there was two people clumped up here and I hold it, it'll knock back those two because those two were close enough in that line that it's going to hit both of them, but it won't ever touch this last person. Okay, and the same thing if there's a line of three, it's only going to hit that first one. So be really careful about using this ultimate if you're trying to either disengage by knocking certain people away in the fight, or engage by knocking certain people up really quickly, right? If we just want to do this, make sure you try and maximize its use if you're looking to hit multiple targets by getting into a spot where these targets are close enough together. And again, this hitbox is a little bit weird, so I'd recommend getting into a practice tool and trying it out. You could hit people together like this, you could knock them back together like this, but just try and learn, you know, if there's a group of them, what you want to do. If you somehow jam somebody into a wall with all three, knock up all three, Q couple of them, right, W to prevent them from jumping away. Try and just understand Poppy's hitboxes and when you want to either engage or disengage with her abilities. That would be the hard part of learning this champion, really understanding in every scenario how you want to use your abilities. Same kind of thing with the Q in terms of the hitbox. You know, if you catch somebody right on the edge, you can technically still hit them when you might miss them otherwise. And then same thing with multiple people here. You might be able to catch people at the edge, but ideally you want to be in spots where you can catch two or maybe all three if you can sneak that hitbox in to hit all three. Okay, guys, so that's Poppy's abilities. Let's jump into a lane phase now and have some fun against a AI bot and see what we can do with Poppy's kit. Okay, guys, so we're in our sample lane phase here. We're just in the mid lane because it's a custom game, so anything we do here you can replicate in the top lane. Important thing to know right off the bat when you're laning, are you against the melee or are you against the ranged? If you're against the range, you want to really make sure you're using your Grasp of the Undying with your passive when it's up to hit the enemy champion at range, get a shield, proc your Grasp. If you're into melee, you want to try and make sure you're using your Q when they're in range and going for last hits on their minions. So here we're against a Renekton. I'm just going to kind of stand near the wave, and when he comes up to get his last hits, I'm going to try and hit him with a Q. If I can get him with both parts and land an auto in, perfect. If not, you're just going to try and keep harassing with your Q. It's got a fairly short cooldown, and it has a pretty good amount of damage if they get stuck in it. So just keep trying to harass them with your Q and proc your Grasp of the Undying when you can. So here we got our buckle. We're keeping an eye on it always. Another couple seconds. He's going to come in. We're going to try and hit him with the Q, pick up the buckle, and proc our Grasp. Okay, we're higher level than him now, so we're going to try and again just beat up on him while we have a minion advantage. Poppy's really good at pushing waves with her Q because of the area of effect damage. Not the best, but because it's area of effect and it has two parts, it is good at pushing waves as opposed to just relying on autos. So in spots like this, again, when he comes up, it's not always going to hit, but you want to try and threaten them when they're coming up for last hits by using your buckle on them, proccing that Grasp, or using Q and hitting them like that. So here we have Renekton coming into us into a minion wave, so we're going to punish him a little bit for that. He steps up again, takes some damage here. We hit him with the buckle. You can see it's not a lot of like super big playmaking right now, especially against melee champions. You're going to be just looking to land your Q, you pick up your shield from your buckle, and then just try and proc your Grasp when it's up, all right? Be careful to not fight in massive minion waves as Poppy if you don't have the minion advantage. As a melee champion without really a dash, it's going to be hard to drop that aggro if you pick it up. So I would just recommend, again, using your Q and autos when Grasp and the buckle are up so that you can definitely come out ahead in that trade or give yourself the best chance to because of the shield. Now, if you happen to push somebody out of lane, you want to try and use your Q to try and shove the wave in as fast as possible and then go back to base and buy. So here, same thing, we're going to put our Q on the wave, try and get as many last hits as we can, and then we might look for a base or let the wave come back out to us. All right. Poppy's strongest in terms of trying to kill people when they're out away from their tower and you can hit them into a wall. So mid lane's a bit tougher than top, but we'll see if we can jam this Renekton into this wall and then use our W to prevent him from dashing away and then land a Q combo. So here we'll come up, we'll use a speed boost, we'll hit him into the wall, prevent the dash by putting our W down, and then we'll just keep fighting him here. All right, we got some good damage off on him there. That's the basic combo for Poppy. If you can line somebody up in a wall and then start to hit them with your Qs, that's the best way to try and trade. If you get ahead as Poppy into a melee matchup, she can be very annoying because it's easy to land her damage and the stun is pretty good if they're near walls. But if you're behind, just try and farm the best you can using your buckle getting your grass, picking up the shield, and using your potions and biscuits to survive in lane. We've had an okay lane so far, so I haven't had to use too many of them, but some lane phases are tougher than others. We're going to rush towards this Iceborne Gauntlet. Sheen is a great first item to pick up if you're even in lane and you're having a good time fighting the enemy champion and you have a chance to kill them. If you're taking too much damage, it's not a favorable matchup and you just need to survive to keep farming and stay relevant, then you might want to consider picking up the Kindle Gem or the Chain Vest. So Sheen, if you're kind of fighting, you feel like you have a chance to win the lane phase. If you feel like you just need to survive the lane phase, keep farming safely, then you might go Kindle Gem or Chain Vest depending on your setup here. So I'll just TP back to lane here just so I can try and pick up this cannon wave in case he shoves it. Now, there's a big wave here, so we wouldn't necessarily be looking to trade into this Renekton, but we can still land a Q and hit both parts of it while he's trying to shove in the wave. Alright? As the wave comes in, you can also use your Q like this to damage it before it gets to your tower. I accidentally pressed W there. Now we've got our R, and now the wave's on this side. So we could look to try and jam this Renekton into a wall with our E if he mispositions. I'm going to always try and walk into a side that I feel like if he mispositions, there's a chance for me to E him into a wall. So here, you can see I eat him into the wall. I'm going to use my W to prevent him from flying away. And we're going to try and catch him with the Q, almost kill him. I think if I use my R just to tap it there to hit him, keep him in place and maybe deal some more damage, might have got the kill. But again, it's going to be tough to get kills on Poppy early on unless you get some gank assist, and that's where she's really strong, because if you can knock someone into the wall and prevent them from dashing away with your W, it's usually a pretty good chance for your jungler to either follow up and get the kill for you or get enough damage on them that you can get the kill. Now, we talked about Poppy not really being great at taking towers, tower plates, but of course if the enemy champion is not in lane anymore, try and get as many tower plates as you can. Just keep bashing the tower, get those 175 paychecks, and then push out the waves as well with your Q. So here, again, we've got about 800 gold. Really good chance for us to just push this Renekton around a little bit here, pick up every bit of last hits that we can, chunk them out with our E and Q, and then we're going to go back to base and keep building towards that gauntlet. Now once we get the gauntlet, we're going to be pretty powerful in lane because of the slow and the spell blade, so let's keep building towards this. If you're having trouble farming or you need to push the waves faster than what we're doing right now, you could pick up, and this is with more experience in your games, you could pick up a Balmy Cinder early, but that's a little bit more wave management and manipulation, I'd say, as a beginner. Just have fun rushing the Iceborne Gauntlet in your games and relying on your Q for your wave pushing ability here, okay? So Renekton is thinking about going close to a wall. We're going to use our combo of E, W, Q to prevent him from dashing away. I missed my R, actually. He had a good dash there. So we're looking for the knock up there just off the quick tap, but he managed to dodge it and get away. So unfortunate for us, we don't get a kill, but we are still chunking this guy out really hard now with the spell blade and our armor. So he's going to have to look for a base. If he doesn't look for a base here, I'll show you guys a cheeky all-in tactic that you can do with Poppy, and it's against their own turret. So a lot of times when people are being shoved under the turret, they'll kind of stand near a wall because they want to stand as close as they can to their turret to stay safe, and that's when you can look to jam them into their own turret, auto Q them, and then use your W movement speed to run away from the tower fast enough, or to prevent them from dashing if you need to get the kill. Alright, here we're going to get another turret plate. Pick up as many of these last hits as we can. Renekton's missing a lot of farm here. But you can see, guys, there's not really any like super micro combos with Poppy. It's just about lining up your E on a wall if you can, and then landing Qs like this whenever they're up. So here, we're just hitting them with Qs whenever we can, autos if we can, and then just keep landing Qs. You can think of the Q almost like a floor is lava. If you put it down, the person cannot stay near that floor or they're going to just take some damage. So here, Renekton's against the wall, so we're going to E him into the wall, stun him. We finally get a kill. Took long enough here, even against the bot, so not the greatest all-in power with Poppy, and you'll tell that as well when you're playing her. You're just not going to have as much power as you used to if you're playing kind of a bruiser or a fighter champion where the combos are hurting a little bit harder. She really kind of shines, I would say, more in the mid-game when we start to team fight a little bit more, and you can bring out some of the power from the utility and the crowd control that you have in your kit. So we'll rush... we'll sell that off, actually. Let me see if we can get by our Iceborne Gauntlet if we sell this off. We'll wait for it. So we'll just wait for a little bit more gold for Iceborne Gauntlet, and then we'll go back to lane. We'll try and kill this Renekton one more time, and then we're going to try and show you guys how you might want to team fight or look to gank lanes if you were playing Poppy jungle, or even if you were ahead in your lane phase and you're able to push out waves and roam, how you might want to do that. So you can use your W to get back to lane a little bit faster because of the move speed, and it'll be off cooldown by the time we get back here. Now with the power of the Iceborne Gauntlet, let's see if we can all in this Renekton. So again, you always want to try and move in a way where you can line them up to a wall. So here we got some move speed, put the W down off it, and then just start fighting him here. Try and put down that Q whenever you can. We can't get him. We're going to try and E him into his own wall here. There you go, right? So as we get tankier, these turret dives become more and more possible. And the slow off the Iceborne Gauntlet also helped with locking down targets if we do happen to spear them into a wall. So we'll get one more tower plate here. And then we're going to try and show you guys just a quick way of how you might want to gank with Poppy. So we're going to start to run down towards this Trundle. Now, if we get behind him and we don't need the move speed off our W, we'll just E him into a wall. But if we need the move speed to try and get into a good position to E him, we'll try and do that. The other thing you can do is you can flash E. Well, we missed it there. But you can try and flash E someone into a wall. That's a really good combo as Poppy to surprise someone, especially if they're kind of low health or you think you can grab the kill for you or someone on your team. You can look to flash E. So here, we can go for the tower dive or just push him out of tower range, knock him up with that R, just with the R tap, and then get a kill that way. So guys, hopefully that shows you kind of just some intro fundamentals to playing Poppy. We messed up the flash there, but I'd say as you get more games in her, the real differentiators between kind of beginner Poppies and good Poppies are knowing the exact hitboxes of your Q, the stun ranges into terrain with your E, and then how to use your R in situations, whether you want to tap it to just keep a fight going longer and keep someone in place, or if you want to hold the R and toss them back towards their tower and create like a 5v4 situation for your team. If you can get that stuff down over games and games and games, you'll start to notice higher and higher win rates with Poppy and more success. So here, same thing, we're just going to keep fighting this guy, keep throwing down Qs when you can. If we can hit both parts of it, great. If we can't, that's fine too. We're actually out of mana, so maybe we'll stop the video here. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed the beginner's guide. I will catch you in the next one.